All right, welcome everybody to District Advisory Board 3 for July 3rd, 2019. Hope everybody has plans for the 4th of July, and hope you stay safe. It's fitting that we have a fire department here tonight to make sure that we're safe, and our police department, because I know they'll be teaming up on some enforcement for our fireworks on the 4th. So, that being said, I have called the meeting to order. The approval for the agenda for July 3rd. Has everybody had a chance to see the agenda? Do they have any changes or corrections that need to be made in the agenda today? Do that? Yeah, we're not meeting. Oh, yeah, how about that?
I don't care.
For the minutes, yes. Okay. And then if the law department wants us to go back and reapprove next month, we will. We have a motion to approve. All those, any further discussion? On the agenda? Yeah. I shouldn't be what they is on the sample. Yes. Sure. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say sign. Motion carries. Approval for the minutes for June 5th, 2019. Any changes or corrections in the minutes? Okay, I'll entertain a motion for approval. So moved. For action in a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, like I said, if we need to re-vote on those, we will. We'll go ahead and consult the law department to make sure. That being said, community policing report.
Yeah, sure.
Come on up.
Where would you like us?
Wherever, where people can see you.
You got the gun.
Well, I'll start off.
I guess with the camera, yeah, the camera can see you.
I'm Dustin Fussell. I'm the new 23 community police officer. And so we're representing Southside today. Looking at, we did some stats looking back at the last 2 months. We missed last month, but you guys see so much, you guys get to see those comparisons. So I did some stat comparisons from May 1st to June 2nd, and then from June 3rd up until now. So looking at some of our main crimes, some commercial robberies that we had about 4 of those back between May and June. And those dropped actually 3. We only had 1 this last month as far as commercial robberies. As far as individual robberies, persons, things of that nature, we've had actually a decrease in 6. It went from 13 down to 7. As far as burglaries to commercial businesses, that one we've actually had an increase in. So we went from 11 up to 19. We've had an increase of 8. Burglaries to residences, we've had a decrease of 3 on that. Went from 46 down to 43. One of our main issues that we were dealing with the prior month, from May to June, we had a lot of motor vehicle thefts. We had 64 of those, and this last month it's actually dropped down to 48. So reduction of 16 on those. Larcenies of vehicles, that's where people want to take stuff out of people's cars. That seems to be an ongoing issue. From 116 of those back in May, that's dropped actually down to 84. So we've got 32 less of those. And our ag assaults went down from 65 in May down to 52, so we've got 13 less of those. I know Officer Lewis here has been working pretty hard with our audit theft teams and stuff. He's really willing to talk about what's going on.
Well, just not me. We have a audit theft group that meets every 3rd Wednesday. City Hall has people from larceny, has audit theft lieutenants, and deputies. Trying to go into everything there, crime analysis, looking at where they're happening, how it times are occurring. Me and Officer Russell, his beats right to the north of me. He's had quite a few audit thefts in his area. There's a lot of things we do to check. We're looking at who's rolling in that area, stuff like that. So there's commonality. Getting drug audit theft in the back of the area. Just last week, we caught 2 individuals that historically, they're taking, so hopefully that will die down because the, one person involved, match description, so we're about substance. So, with that, we're down, also we need, those lawyers, with other agencies, we need to deal with, see if we really have conflict, they're on our radar, with a lot of things. A lot of it is, see if we're getting arrested, get right back down. The meeting this morning, that guy was arrested out of that last week. The meeting this morning, got to be right back down. I mean, they only stay in there maybe a week, 3 or 4 days. So if you're building, you know you're not going to get trouble for it, why you gonna stop? So that's sort of back to us, you know, keep the party on, don't leave the zone.
And that's the major theme in a lot of these cases. People leave their keys in, they run in a quick shop, or a quick trip or something, and the car's gone.
Let's say with the auto license, stuff that they didn't have to do. You got your laptops up, just take it in, take a duffel bag, your briefcase, just take it in that night. I know it's a hassle, just take it in, okay, that's what you guys are looking for. Look for the easy stuff, with on, you look for computers, so you look for information, access, that issue, see if you can get. Speaking of that, we this morning, mail thefts are up. So, you see somebody working around out in the open area, checking mailboxes and stuff, please call. Okay? Because those are up there, that's starting to be happening. So, there's a lot of issues going on, and we're working on it as a community and as in the department of agencies with different agencies in the area, trying to figure out, combine our information together to see where these guys all get. So, probably all, you know, so. Do you have any questions of us?
What's the percentage of people that left their keys in the car? I was at District 4 meeting Monday, and they had 40 exposed victims. 10 of them either left it running or left their keys in there. So 75%.
I don't have that percentage, but I can tell you, so each week we get to look through the cases of the auto thefts, and it's just a recurring trend. If I was to guess, I would say probably about 90. Yeah, it's pretty high. So,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, has there been a change in policy? Eric and I haven't talked to Gordon on this, but there seems to be somewhat of a disconnect between our hot team, the Broadway corridor team, and our regular patrol officers. What we've documented here lately is that patrol officers would rather turn it over to hot team or the corridor team, irregardless of, you know, what's happening at that time. And they're simply just driving off. You know, we're not getting any feedback, any follow-up reports or anything else. In fact, it just happened twice today to me. So I know there's the corridor team, and I know it's more investigative in nature and everything else. But this disconnect that we're having, if we're not gonna, because we have the gang activities, we got Bloods and Crips mixed now, and BLB on the corridor. If we're not taking immediate action while the, striking while the iron is hot, by the time it gets to the corridor, we don't have any evidence or the situation's moved on.
Well, speaking of that, we have seen an increase in the past several months on his beat and beats of 1 week of game food. And that's where they, like, say, I'm doing that one, I'm spraying that, and that's what the circuit is, spray there. Well, we combated that with spraying, single sheet, spray paint over, covering up. Hopefully, it can't be spray paint and messages back and forth. And also with that, there's some enforcement investigations upstairs with other agencies that they're working on targeting certain offenders. So that's going on. The Broadway corridor team is also working on that. They're just staying within Broadway area, staying with their mission, but they are still working with them on that.
Okay, so for me to get additional information, find out what's going on, because as a resident and a victim constantly in the area, looking at it from the public standpoint, it looks like nothing's being done. So, I mean, is it a top secret type thing, or can I get the information and say?
No, there's stuff being done. I'm telling you,
Are you wanting like stats from like the corridor team, or are you wanting to know if there's what connection there?
Let me give you an example. I don't want to take a whole lot of time. Let me just give you a quick example. In between the motels, there's often a little corridor. And what they do is they act as gatekeepers there for prostitution and drugs and weapons that are constantly running between the motels. But when I see it happening and I film it, and I have an officer respond only to suspicious activity, it warrants the officer getting out and saying, why are you drinking and standing here in the middle? But we're not getting that. We're getting flybys and no follow-up. So that's why I'm saying there's this disconnect that when something is happening, even if it's just under suspicious behavior, it warrants the officer coming out and asking some questions to lead to more investigation.
Are you asking for contact on any of those?
I do it on every time, and I'm on the average of 2 to 3 calls to 911 to get either a response within 45 minutes to an hour, or get any kind of callback. Now, I did get a callback today from the activity that happened. Now, and then just recently, we were accosted in the driveway by another tweaker, and I did get an immediate response. So I thank you guys for that. Appreciate that. But there again, the officer repeated the same thing. I'll have to turn this over in the corridor, but I will keep an eye on your property like I get. Okay, and that's just me.
Yeah.
Imagine how many else are in the corporate experience.
We'll bring that up.
Thank you.
Staff. Make sure you stress it.
Everybody knows me. Easy to find me, contact me.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'd like to ask you, are they asking you about moral complaints or anything like that? That's good. I've got caught up in that.
And are you even seeing them going up there besides the 2 times? Those times before you're just seeing them drive by and they're not really making contact.
And it's not like, oops, I missed it.
Right.
What happened Sunday, she was throwing cinder blocks out in the street at cars. The very first officer that did come by after my second call ran over the very same cinder blocks that were the issue. And so,
Well, and it's possible when those ones that you're seeing them driving by, they may not be responding to your call. They might be going to another call too. So, because it's on Broadway, right? On Topeka, okay, and we drive through there all the time. So, and sometimes they might be going to a high priority call or something like that. So, I can't say I wasn't there, but, it's possible. That might be what's going on. So, I mean, we've seen some calls, because everybody's so short staffed that sometimes calls do end up holding for a couple of hours. And, it's just as frustrating for us too, because we want to get out there, we want to contact these people.
you're not blaming anything, I'm just trying to
No, absolutely.
figure out what's going
Yeah.
We'll do your service.
on. Like,
Any more questions?
The only other thing I was gonna bring up, unless you're bringing it up, the South Central is having their showcase.
Oh, no,
Does
bring it up.
anybody bring that up?
Yeah, please do.
Please bring it up.
Yeah. July 20th, the South Central Neighborhood Association is inviting everybody that lives in the area between Kellogg and Herring out to Washington and to the river, so that box there. If you live in that neighborhood, they're doing a showcase of the neighborhood to sort of just bring up the good that's going on in the neighborhood. So that's going from 11 to 2. Their website is SOCEshowcase.com. You guys want to get more information on that. Looks like a great event. You go, I think there's a bus that's driving around that takes people to these different areas. If you go to all of them, there's like 300 for a prize, something like that. So it looks like it'd be a good event. They've invited us out to that as well. And then he had a neighborhood coming up.
Yeah, so June 22nd, that neighborhood went very well. Brandon Sondi out there was really good. Got a lot of, they had 2 trucks going, we had a lot of volunteers, came in and did really good. That also helps in the crime. And we're also going to follow up on the problem house in Patty. We're working with the PCD to take care of. And for the 3 or 4 times. But hopefully we'll get some take care of it and get that more secure. Make it safer also. Yes, sir.
I've noticed fairly recently, the last 6 months or maybe more, police cruisers driving slowly through Hilltop with the lights out. Is that a fruitful technique? Is that unique only to Hilltop, or is that
They're
area?
probably just trying to get close to the situation about it. So,
Yep.
I did that on the west side when I worked out west.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
that's probably what we-
I live in over on Green. Police cruisers go by about as fast as civilian does. I've only noticed it in slow driving with the lights out in Hilltop. But if it's vertical enough, it ought to be about the city.
Was that at night when was that at night when you were in Hilltop? Was that at night?
Yeah. At least 3 or 4 times.
Well, I know where you live, that's where we were doing a lot with the PD and stuff, so I had my PD officers, they were cruising, because it's happening at night, is when all those tagging were happening, so they're probably trying to be seen.
Well, I'm assuming it's fairly frequent. And one of the times I was on Menlo, on the west end of Menlo, getting out of the car, a cruiser went by with the lights out. And by the time I got up to the next street, they stopped some people on bicycles.
Hold on.
I'm just saying, I'm just looking at the side, so. And I'm familiar with Hilltop, so. That's probably-
Well, that's a common response to at night when they're checking out on a call too, that before they even enter on the street, usually they'll turn off their lights because they're not trying to signal that they're there. So.
Anybody have anything else?
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it, thank you.
You guys are doing a good job.
All right, next, fire department, come on up.
Good evening, everyone. I am Captain Snyder with Engine 22 over here on South End Drive. That's my crew right here. So, again, 4th of July, we're really looking forward to it. We'll start out with something other than the fireworks. As of June, I assumed, I was looking at May and June, just like that officer did on reports. May, they had in District 3, we had a total of 732 incidents with 51 of them fire alarms, 72 were miscellaneous, and 609 medicals. 732 in May, June 739. So pretty even. June, there was only 25 fire alarms, so
Is that just out of 22?
that's out of, no, that's in District 3.
Okay, I was like, how did you guys even do
No,
that?
that's in District 3. Of the 2 fires basically in June that the investigators had to work, total of one house was $49,000 and the other one was $25,000. The other ones were insignificant, not even enough to work. About the same with May, except there was 4 total, but about the same amount of damage. So, other than that, I guess we'll talk about fireworks.
Have at it. Everybody's favorite topic.
I'm sure it is. Everybody loves them or they hate them, one or the other. That's what we've seen. Again, our policy, city policy is shoot them where you get them, but that doesn't stop anyone from going 2 minutes outside the city and bringing them right back in. So
Well, most of the places don't even have an area to shoot them. So, I mean, that advice is always given, but all of those tents, they don't have areas where people can
even
even
outside the city. Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's out of our hands. That's out of our hands. Now, last year was the first time we did this, and we're doing it again this year. WFD's teaming up with PD. This year, they're sending 7 teams out tonight and tomorrow between 8 o'clock tonight and 2 o'clock this morning. There'll be 2 police officers and 1 fireman, 1 firefighter
In each team.
in each team.
How many teams?
7. They're going to try to hit the areas that they consider hot spots or whatever you want to say, and try to catch whoever's shooting illegal fireworks. They will go right in. Well, I was going to say they can park just about anywhere and probably do that, but you got to catch them in the act. That's the big thing. I mean, I can come around the corner and they just shot it off. I can't prove that they did it. So
There's just to interject, there is a line, a phone number you can call,
I've got that here too.
and they're gonna create heat maps based on how many calls they're getting from certain areas. And so they're gonna know, generally the more active areas based on the heat map. So it's pretty sophisticated, actually.
And you call in your complaints, because dispatch doesn't want you to call 911 for a fireworks complaint, because they just get overwhelmed. I mean, they get thousands of calls. So they made a separate number, 290, the gentleman over there said it, 290-1011. If you call that number, do a fireworks complaint. Again, if there's people in the area, we'll drive by and see what we can do. Now, other than them 7 crews, all the fire stations in town are going out at dusk, and we'll be patrolling certain areas around. Like we're gonna be right over in the 22s area and going around seeing what we can find. If you do get a ticket, $250 fine. Which some people just hand out like nothing, and some people won't make that. So, yes.
Well, in my neighborhood, tonight was the first night I heard maybe 10 or 12 go off or down the line. From the 27th.
27th through July 5th.
It's been very, very quiet. Is the expensively, they said they were gonna go up?
I know they said the thing to rent the tents or to buy the tents went up to $1,500, and it used to be $150, was that right? And I think that's kind of to outweigh the cost of the teams that are going out, I believe, is what they told us.
I thought that one local lighting at dusk last night pretty well out.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
Um,
That shook the whole, that shook the earth.
They're supposed to be able to shoot them until midnight. Then after that, they're supposed to stop again. Probably not gonna happen, but not all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you can also file a noise complaint too, if you don't. PD will write tickets on the noise complaint. Fire writes on the fireworks. If it's a juvenile, we try to contact the parents, and the parents will end up getting the citation. Other than that, from dusk till midnight. And they were doing that, all the stations, we started July 1st doing that. So if you were seeing trucks driving around at 11 o'clock in your neighborhood, that was it. We went through July 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're not going to do it on the 5th. So I think that's about it. I wish I could say it would be better, but
I will say last year, we received a lot of comments that up till the 4th, it was a lot better than it had been in previous years. But on the 4th, all bets were off.
and you can probably tell me better. I thought Chief Snow told me they wrote out about 200 tickets last year, which sounds like a lot, but when you consider the size of Wichita, it's pretty little bit, but not much of a dent when you're considering all what's going on.
I remember Chief Snow last year talked a little bit about some of the difficulties that the teams had.
That's what we heard. Well, I wasn't on any of them teams. We just,
It was difficult to get people to go on. It's also expensive, I guess, people were paid.
they put, yeah, they,
extra. Do you know, or do you guys know how some of those challenges were addressed and how this year is different from last year from a strategic standpoint?
what I read on them, one of their major concerns was the safety. They had trouble last year where a fireman, where they just go out and there was just 2 of them. And they ended up having to back out because you get a group of people that's having a pretty good time and
Yeah,
Didn't drink.
I remember that some people were shooting fireworks into the back of the firemen.
so we just leave.
So this year, there will be an officer that is accompanying each of the teams.
Two officers will come.
And
Yeah.
July 7th, we have 6 districts, but there are 7 teams.
17, I don't know how they came up with that number. I wish I could tell you, I don't know.
Are teams going to be assigned to a district, or is it more to a trouble area?
It's gonna be more toward trouble areas. So last year, if you look at the map of where they wrote citations, it was very evenly dispersed. A lot of people were concerned that they were gonna pick on the south side or the north side. It was very evenly dispersed, which honestly, I was surprised at too.
Yeah.
And so, that was good to see. I think you'll see the same thing. But the heat maps, generating heat maps based on calls that they're getting, will help really hit the most troubled areas. And so,
It'll make it
we'll
a lot
see.
more obvious.
yeah, we'll see what difference that makes in where citations are written or not.
Are those maps that you referred to from last year available on the fire department's site?
Yeah. We can find out, I think, We had a,
Chief,
They are.
I don't know if they're available. I
we had a presentation here though.
I was gonna say, I knew there was a PowerPoint about
We
it.
can find it.
Can't have them, but you can see them. I got it right here.
Okay. The ones that were handed out.
Fireworks related response and citation issues.
There you go. Feel free.
And what I enjoyed was reading about the summary of people who got hurt. I mean, I'm sorry they got hurt, but some of these things are unreal. Yeah.
Well, the lady, when there an incident in Hayesville the other night, where the lady got hurt.
Oh my God. So, you do have people.
I have no idea. I don't want to go very detail.
So it really doesn't surprise me last year that they were shooting Roman candles at the backs of firefighters. I used to drive down my street on 31st every 4th of July, coming back from my mom's house at Andover, because that's the fireworks that I shoot. And they would shoot at every car. My car, every car that come by, they'll shoot at the cars.
Here's an oldie but a goodie, 86-year-old female, lower left extremity.
When she was hit by a firework.
Probably.
Doesn't say what type.
Probably got a,
I hope, I
Mortar or whatever.
I mean, is she out there enjoying it, or was she just an instant type?
probably sitting on our lawn and shot across or whatever.
Well, a lot of times they knock those mortars over
Yep.
when they're dropping
Yeah.
it, and they shoot out. And they'll go a block. And they'll hit somebody.
So the only means for communicating problems is a telephone number?
Is that 290-1011?
There's no Twitter?
Not that I know of, not that I've seen.
But it will generate on the heat maps.
Yeah,
So-
so I'm actually making that note on Nextdoor right now, to
Good.
encourage people to.
They need to call. They do.
And the
That'll save money.
the 7 crews that are being sent out, the fire department, 7 people, they're sitting there with 2 police officers, right? So they feel pretty comfortable.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
now, when we go out tonight, us 3 in that fire truck,
That's wrong.
you know,
And that's
I mean, we
the way-
might come up to somebody, they're nice, and, you know, hey, you guys, want robbed? But then, you know, we're not sitting here with a 9mm on our side. So,
You don't even have a body cam, do you?
no, we don't have body cam, we don't have.
A lot of times they'll say,
Give me stun gun yet?
No, I'd rather not have. I got a hose. I can hook up my.
There you go.
That's about it.
"Gotta put the fireworks down."
But the seven crews that are going out, they'll make a lot bigger dent than the.
Honestly, what we
Going out
find out, and you guys probably see this too, if they see a fire truck coming or something, they're scattering. A lot of
We
times.
turn the corner and you can just watch,
Yeah,
you know.
so it's.
Or if they've had enough partying, they turn back around and they just start shooting them and bouncing them off the windows.
Yeah.
And that's when we don't get out.
So I just have one more question. So where can you legally shoot off fireworks?
In the city of Wichita, you can shoot them off anywhere as long as you bought them fireworks in the city of Wichita. Now, if you bought them out in Goddard or wherever, then you gotta shoot them out in Goddard. Yes,
Okay, I live across the street from Cloud Golf Course, so I can walk across the street into the golf course and shoot fireworks?
well, if the golf course would allow that, but I don't think they'll allow that. You can shoot them off, you can shoot them off in your yard.
Well, it's not gonna be a ballpark thing.
So park properties, you're not allowed, but people do. We find, oh my God, piles of trash,
Yeah,
trash strewn out in the parks.
I've never seen anybody do it. I mean, from my viewpoint, I can see almost 75% of the golf course. I've never seen anything go up, so I don't think anybody's doing it.
I don't know if there's any public
See, that was talked about
place the
last
city
year.
has legally to shoot them off. You can shoot them off on your own property as far as that's.
This
far as
may
I
be
know.
area.
Right, which might be a good idea if they find something, but it'd have to be a large area. Any other questions?
Do any of you work tomorrow?
No, we work till tomorrow morning at 7. Tonight and tomorrow is usually the big days, so.
Look at the grandson yelling.
Everyone will be out many days in advance.
The 3rd and the 4th are, well, the 3rd's usually just as bad as the 4th.
On all of y'all's part.
3rd's usually just as bad as the 4th, unless the 4th happens to land on Saturday and then they don't have to work. You know, the 4th is on Thursday, so people's got to work Friday, so they shoot them off tonight. So,
Yeah.
a lot of them.
Well, keep up the good work.
Well, you guys try to stay safe.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
We appreciate it. Stay safe. Thank you.
Good one.
Yeah, I'm looking, I don't know.
So
We have
just,
two that aren't, and one that just goes with her.
just to dovetail a little bit off of the discussion about the ordinance. So this is the second year of enforcement. We haven't changed the ordinance. The ordinance has been in place for a long time. We just started with enforcement because it wasn't enforceable before. We had no mechanism to enforce it. Are we going to stop all fireworks? Absolutely not. It's gonna continue to happen. But we did see an improvement. I had many people say they saw improvements up till the 4th. This is only the second year, and so we'll take probably 2 or 3 years before people get the idea. The other thing is, we're going to continue to look at ways that we can tweak the ordinance too. We had considered safe zones and safe places to do it, but as we look at other cities that had those, there were a tremendous amount of injuries in those areas, and you get hundreds of people going to the safe zones to do these big fireworks, and imagine knocking over one of those mortar rounds right into a group of people and so close. So those can be a little bit more dangerous than just doing them in your own yard, your own neighborhood. So we're continuing to look at how we can tweak it. We don't want people to not have fun on the 4th. Absolutely, that's not the case. But being in such a densely populated area, we just try to keep everybody safe. Yeah.
James, I have a question on that.
Yeah.
It's 2017, we passed the ordinance on the $1,500 tent.
Mhm.
Correct. Have we seen a decline? Because most of those tents were Big Brothers, Cub Scouts, they were charity organizations. Have we seen a decline in the request for those permits as opposed to Wichita wholesale fireworks?
Yeah.
Getting more?
Yeah. So that was something that we discussed last year. Last year we didn't see a decline. This year, I'm not sure. I don't have those numbers.
Last year you sold 32 $1,500.
32 tents. Yeah.
That's 48,000.
So I know there's some controversy around increasing the price. The price is still relatively low compared to Andover, Goddard, and some of the other places that you go outside the city. So we try to be fair and keep our prices low because those organizations are also doing them out in those areas and it's charged by how big your tent is. And so, so I know we wanted to be respectful of those people trying to raise money, but at the same time also try to enforce our ordinances. And how do we find a happy medium? We'll know more after this year and next year, whether or not it's stifling the ability for those organizations to raise money or not. And again, if we need to tweak it, we can tweak it. That's been the council's attitude about it. If we have to tweak it, we will. So, good question. All right, moving on. Under new business, I have asked the Greater Wichita Partnership to come here today. They are the economic development arm for the city of Wichita. And Evan Roselle and Andrew Nate are here today with the partnership. They're just going to give us kind of an update on their efforts in economic development here in the city of Wichita and what they're doing and what initiatives they're doing. So Andrew?
I'll start off. Thank you. So I'm Andrew Nave, and I help lead our economic development team at the partnership with Evan. So he's going to kind of tag team here with me a little bit as we talk about economic development. I'm going to talk a little bit about jobs. So I lead our jobs team, and then Evan's going to talk about talent and some of quality of place initiatives and some major things. But really everything the partnership does is economic development. So if you're not familiar with us, Evan's passing out some materials. I think we have enough for everyone. And we even have a kind of a marketing piece that we just produced for opportunity zones. I think we might have enough for everyone. But if you're not familiar with the partnership is a nonprofit organization. We're 4 years old. We were kind of birthed, if you will, with the merger of the Wichita Downtown Development Corporation, Downtown Wichita, and the Greater Wichita Economic Development Coalition, which was a kind of an economic development division of the Chamber of Commerce. So we came together 4 years ago. We have about 125 private sector companies that are our investors, our members as a nonprofit. And then we very much appreciate the support the councilmen and other members of the city council give us with a little bit of city funding, and then Sedgwick County government also funds some of our programs and initiatives. But we're about 85% of our funding is from this private sector. What you're seeing around the United States is kind of the leading trend. I've been doing this for 15 years in 2 different states. And over that course of my career, you've seen kind of the funding and the interest and the initiative of economic partnership from what used to be solely a public purview to now the private sector being more engaged, more interested in seeing the quality of life, seeing the development of their community being a priority. So that's kind of our model. I think we're kind of a little bit ahead of the curve there with the vast majority of our funding coming from the private sector. That would be from some of the largest companies in the community, from Spirit AeroSystems and Intrust Bank and some of our major employers, but then also small employers as well. So we have a staff of about 17 people. I'm on a team, our jobs team, our economic development team of about 7 of us. So wanted to share just a little bit about how we support the recruitment of jobs. We don't actually recruit any jobs as economic developers. We support job creators. We support business owners and entrepreneurs. They're the ones that are creating jobs, but our job is to support those efforts and to come alongside our elected officials as they create a business environment to do that. We support job creation really in 3 ways, and in our program of work, our strategies really mirror the 3 ways that a job is created in a community or in a place. So a job comes from a startup or a new enterprise that didn't exist before. So a new business, startup, or an entrepreneur, that is how a job is created. A job is expanded in a community. So there's an employer, a company that is growing and adding jobs. So that's a method that jobs are added to your community. And then probably the one that gets the most headlines and the most attention, and we get asked the most about, is that a new company comes to town, so the job is attractive to your community. So those are the 3 ways that the job happens in a place. And so our strategies line up to those 3 methods. So we work with entrepreneurship and we support that. There's a lot of great organizations in the community. Evan helps a ton in that endeavor. So we don't do as much with that, where our staff focus the vast majority of their time is helping existing businesses grow and expand. And I always use the analogy that much like many of you are business owners and that most of your revenue or most of your business growth comes from existing customers, it's the same premise in economic development or job growth, that most of our new jobs in Wichita are going to come from companies that are already here, and they're the ones that are expanding. And then certainly we're going to work to try to attract new employers. But some of the ways we help existing businesses, we do a lot of things. A lot of our work lately over the last several years has been around workforce development and talent recruitment. So we're helping our employers make sure that they know what are those programs that they can utilize at our school systems and our universities and our colleges to train their workers. There are federal programs that have funding for worker training, retraining, whether it's on the job or in a classroom setting. So we connect our employers to those resources. And then we'll help in a myriad of other ways, whether that's helping an existing company expand their real estate. And they don't know the real estate dynamics or who's a good builder, or how do they go through the city building permitting process. We're there to be kind of an ombudsman and help our existing employers do that. So an example of that, this last year, we've been a part of right around 1,000 jobs. In 2019, we've supported the creation of about 1,000 jobs in Wichita. One example of that would be King of Freight that made the news several weeks back, going into the Gander Mountain building. But they're actually kind of an entrepreneurial success story in this community. Young individuals from Andover and from Wichita got into the logistics industry, the logistics and freight brokerage industry, and have grown that to several hundred employees, and are actually going to be adding, for the city agreement, another 400, and we actually think what they didn't disclose publicly is actually several hundred more on top of that. So they could be a significant employer, but that was a local company that we met with several times and gave them ideas and support around how do you continue to grow here, as opposed to growing in Dallas or in California where they were getting overtures. So that's how we help existing companies grow and expand, and then a lot of ways that we try to recruit new companies to come to Wichita. The primary way we do that is through marketing. So we use marketing pieces like this document is dedicated around opportunity zones. We have a very robust website that we promote. We do a lot of things through social media now. We've actually just this last year, our marketing team is engaged in what's called geofencing. So if you're not familiar with that, that's actually putting a digital fence around a location. Because of all of our phones have GPS enabled applications and websites, we can actually send messages to specific businesses and to specific individuals with cell phones in a defined area. So we can figure out maybe where a company is headquartered or where a CEO might be at a trade show. And we can start to bombard that geographic area with our content and our messages about Wichita. So it's getting pretty high tech and pretty cutting edge. We're able to use our resources and our marketing dollars in a lot smarter way. Another way that we're being smarter about economic development, being more targeted, especially when it comes to how do we go after companies? How do we decide which companies do we chase? A lot of our work is reactive. And we're a pretty small team, and so we're grateful for our resources, but we're not able to follow up with every lead or every opportunity, so we're reacting a lot. But in the ways that we can go out new opportunities are through targeted industries. And many of you might have been familiar with or heard about BREG, which was the Blueprint for Regional Economic Growth. It was a study that was done in this community in 2015, led by Wichita State University, and it was that kind of targeted industry analysis. They did a lot of deep economic data and analysis on what is our economy built on, what are the core industries that drive our economy, obviously aerospace, but healthcare, manufacturing, oil and gas, several others that build our economy. And so we use that as kind of a launching pad. Well, won't go into all the details of it, but we've got this document here that I think most of you have. So this is kind of a snapshot of what we've done with BREG in 2015 as a plan and how it's evolved. This last year, we worked with a major economic development consulting firm out of Atlanta, Georgia. And this firm's helped Nashville, Tennessee. They helped Des Moines. They helped some of the leading regions and communities around the United States. But we hired them as one of the best to help us take the really good foundation we had in BREG as a plan and convert it into a more tactical plan, which we call the Regional Growth Plan. And it's important to know that while we care immensely about the city of Wichita and Wichita's growth, because if Wichita grows, this whole region grows, but we will work with communities not only in Sedgwick County, but in the 9 counties around us. So our economic development services extend as far north as McPherson, to McPherson County, south to the Oklahoma line, west to Hutchinson and Reno County, and east to El Dorado and Butler County. And the reason we did that was born out of the BREG plan, the analysis that Wichita State did. And what we found was, while our census, our MSA from the Census Bureau is only 5 counties, what we found for our employers is that our labor shed, our area, really our metro, is a 10-county area. It's roughly an hour's drive in every direction. If you think about that from Wichita, McPherson's a little more than an hour north, and Oklahoma line's about an hour south, and Hutchins about an hour. So what we found is our workforce is willing to drive about an hour in one direction. So that's what we describe when we talk about our region, who we think we are. Because as a region with that geography, we're about 800,000 people. We're not the 455,000 people of Wichita or the 580,000 people of Sedgwick County, almost 800,000 people. So it helps us promote and sell this place. So I won't go through into all the details of the regional growth plan, but it's very tactical. What we did was we take these industries and we started to drill down several layers deeper into what are the real opportunities within our economy. We know that aerospace is a strength. It's an industry strength that employs 40,000 people in this region. But what are the next areas of opportunity within that evolving industry? Manufacturing is changing. So we think that the service side of aerospace, what we call maintenance, repair, and overhaul, is a niche of aerospace that we can really maximize. So that's one example of many recommendations that were born out in the regional growth plan. So you can go into the super dorky deep weeds if you'd like to, if you have questions, but that's really how we take our strategies, and then we're able to really prioritize, okay, so we don't need to chase all these industries, but we know there's certain niche opportunities that we can chase with the resources.
Way less exciting than describing the firework injuries.
Yes.
It's a hard,
Exactly.
How close is Wichita State involved on current? I mean, because they've got their innovation
campus.
Yeah, and so do you work together? Do you consult them, or do they come to you with ideas, or?
All of the above. We work very closely with them. So their chief of staff, Andy Schlapp, is on our board. Dr. Bardo, before his passing, and now Dr. Tompkins is on our executive board. We're connected to their leadership throughout. We were just with NIAR, the National Institute for Aviation Research, which you're probably familiar with. We were with a number of their team at the Paris Air Show, which is kind of the major international air show for aviation It's a tough gig, I realize, to go to Paris for work, but that's where the industry goes every other year. That's where they all convene. And so we went there, and there was a whole team from NIAR there. I'll tell you, selling aerospace and selling aviation in this community is a lot different than selling IT. And that's how we kind of couch ourselves as kind of the salesman for the community. And it's a very easy sale when it goes to aerospace, because we have all the assets, we have all the people, we have all the stats. Everybody knows us everywhere we go. Oh, Wichita, yeah, I used to work there. Oh yeah, no, I know all the companies you have there. So it's easy. So it takes a whole different approach. In IT, we have to work a little harder at. But yeah, no, we have an extremely close relationship with WSU.
And Andrew, you were telling me something about NASA and WSU. And are you able to talk about that?
We're not, yeah, they're gonna be releasing that information pretty soon, yeah. That's okay, yeah, but what they have.
It was a nice tease.
Yeah, well, you know what? Yeah.
No, that's all right, but what you are starting to see, that has been publicly released out of NIAR, is that NIAR used to be kind of a certification, a testing arm for just commercial aerospace. But they are dramatically changing, they're getting into defense work. They just won a huge, massive contract for the Air Force and the Army. So they're doing all of the, essentially the refurb work and the maintenance work for the U.S. Army. And a lot of it is parts and components of a tank that aren't made anymore, aren't manufactured anymore. And how do we replace that? How does NIAR, through their composite technology, through additive manufacturing, so 3D printing, how does NIAR help them replace that bolt in the middle of a tank that is now shut down, that multi-million-dollar piece of equipment? But yet NIAR has the capability to kind of refurb that part for them. So they're getting into a whole new strata. They're even, I don't know, they're going to be changing their name anytime soon, but they're far more than just aviation, for sure. Listen.
I know you say you deal with existing business, and you guys did publish this last year, so I did catch a little bit. But along with existing business and new business, if you were to narrow it down to the top 3 issues, what are you hearing the most? Like, why wouldn't your business move to Wichita, with the exception of weather? But I mean, other than completely flooded away.
Yeah.
With the exception of that, what are you hearing from, like I say, potential employers that can come here versus existing taxes, workforce?
So I would say the number 1 issue is talent, finding the right talent. The number 2 issue is talent, and the number 3 issue is talent. All of our conversations with companies are around, prove to me that you as a community or your region either have the people today, and usually they don't believe us when we use statistics or analogy. We work with staffing firms, we work with recruiting firms to show them, hey, we have these bodies, and we have these individuals. Or prove to us you have a pipeline at WSU, Tech now, at Cali County Community College, at our school systems. Show us you have the pipeline, or prove to us with numbers and data that you have the people. Then it becomes very easy to win that company's business. Every other economic development group in the United States is doing the same thing, but it's all about talent. There are other important issues, transportation system, your networks and your ability to get to customers and get your goods and services out is always going to be important. I would tell you, doing this for 15 years, that while tax climate and taxes are important, they're often below the line in terms of the highest criteria. And I'll tell you, the thing that gets the most fanfare, and certainly over the last couple of years, is economic development incentives. It's a lot of talk. I would tell you that's almost hardly ever brought up. Where incentives become important is when a company is determined these 2 or these 3 or these 4 locations all work for me equally well. I know I can find the labor or the talent or the type of building that I need in all of these spots. There's a lot of great places in America. Incentives help us break a tie. They don't make a company move here. They don't make a bad deal good. They break a tie. And that's why they're important, is because when you get that far, and many of our projects, the companies we talked to at the Paris Air Show 2 weeks ago, we won't know their final decision, or they won't have a ribbon cutting with the council member for a year or 2 or sometimes 3. We're working on one project that's 10 years. We've been working it on and off again. It stopped and started again for 10 plus years. So yeah, I would say talent is by far the biggest question.
So what's the talent tell you when you're contacting individuals about why they don't want to move to Kansas or Wichita?
Oddly enough, well, I don't know where I can work. If it's aerospace, it's an easy sell. I know all the companies, and you tell me that there's Spirit here, which is the largest. They're not even a tier 1 supplier. They're somewhere in between tier 1 and an OEM. And I know there's Bombardier, and there's Textron, and there's all these other Airbus. They know them all. But in IT, it becomes more difficult. There's NetApp, there's high touch, but who else do you got? If I move my family from California to Wichita, what if my boss is a jerk? And I don't want to work at NetApp anymore, if I want to work somewhere else. That becomes more problematic. And we try to tell them, hey, there's more than 100 other IT companies in Wichita. Some really cool convergence and Consurgent, and makes one of the country's leading gaming computers, is right here in downtown Wichita. But we need to do a better job of telling those stories and what some of those other opportunities are. With talent, there's a whole service.
So last year when we visited Boise,
Yeah.
one of the things that I was so impressed by in Boise was the fact that Boise decided to create a workforce, a talented workforce around IT. And, that resulted in them just booming and bringing in IT companies. Are we currently working on any similar initiatives here that might, focus on bringing those companies in? I know when I came from Tulsa, I used to work in the staffing industry back many years ago. Tulsa started working on creating people who would really work really well in call centers. They had this initiative, and some call centers started coming from all over, although I'm not sure that that's really the jobs that I want in call centers. Because they're kind of crazy and a lot of turnover, but, so what are we doing?
So there are strategies we have. I'm going to let Evan talk about some of our talent initiatives, but one specifically within IT is a new group that we help foster along with many other groups in town. There's a specific IT association. Now they're looking statewide, but it's predominantly Wichita right now. Flagship Kansas.Tech is the name of the association. But things like that, initiatives like that, getting the industry themselves to come together and make it a priority is really the first step. But I'm going to let Evan talk about kind of talent and some of the things that we do to market talent. It's the same way that my economic development team markets to companies and tries to recruit and attract companies. We're doing the same thing with individuals, with talented professionals.
Yeah, and Cindy, to your question more specifically, things like cybersecurity.
Yeah.
That's an area here that when you think Friends has this amazing cybersecurity program, and you combine that with 184th and what they've done,
Right.
and you combine that with some of the gaming community that's here, you wouldn't necessarily think that those things go together, but there's actually a tremendous amount of synergy, and so it's our job sometimes to find these spots and say, oh, actually, there's something where we can punch above our weight. We've had companies come here and say, how are you producing so much cybersecurity talent? And so that's a lot of the work that this is about, is where are our hotspots? So Boise had Macron, and they're an hour from Silicon Valley. And so there's some things.
That was the key there.
Yeah.
An hour flight to Seattle and Silicon helps there.
Where it's a heck of a lot cheaper, right? And so we have to figure out what are the assets that we have. It might not be the things that we would immediately recognize, but that give us some really key strategies. So cybersecurity, which is one of those. But one of the things you see in this piece here, Andrew talked a lot about jobs, but one of the things we're seeing in a modern, integrated, kind of modern day economic development world is that jobs and talent and quality of place all work together to create a flywheel, and they all support each other. And so rather than just thinking in the realm of a particular job, we want to also think in terms of how do we produce talent here? And by talent, we mean people, human capital, and how do we attract them here from outside? How do we develop them here? And then once they've been developed, how do we keep them here? Those types of things. And one of the things, Michael, you asked about talent, what's important. I think opportunity is a big piece. Like Andrew said, yeah, the first job is great here, but what about the second and the third? Is it big enough for me to grow a career here? And then quality of place issues. So when we think about that, we think like things that are distinctive and authentic about our community. Little things like the flag, but also big things like our river, our attractions, or museums.
Water.
Right? Those types of things. So that when you talk about kind of a younger generation, those things are important to them. So, we've had companies come in and say, all right, let's first look at the real estate, and second day, take us to your breweries and museums. Because we want to know, if our people are going to like it here. And so we see that these things factor in a number of different ways. So when we think about talent, we think kind of in two ways. One of the near term, so for example, Textron announced just recently a continuation of their growth, about 1,000 folks over the next year or so.
And they need people today, right? So there's some short-term strategies. WSU Tech is a great example. Aviation Pathways, a great example that kind of birthed out of some of the work that we've been doing with Business Education Alliance, where filling that immediate need, right? I mean, just we need people, and you know, days of old, perhaps the issue was we had people, we didn't have jobs. Today, within this regional economy, we have jobs. We need people to take them, to be developed and take them. And so when we think of talent, we think of that immediate issue, but then we also think some of the long range things. What are the pipelines? How do we think about anticipating workforce readiness, transition readiness? That nexus point where somebody goes from learning to earning. How do we zoom into that and figure out why people don't make that jump well, and how do we reinforce that so that our pipelines are strong? And so one example of that would be the Business Education Alliance, where we work on things like Read to Succeed, like the Aviation Pathways. Those are relationships and contexts where the employers can say, this is what we need, and they can talk to the educators to say, well, that would be a great way to partner. We didn't know that you needed that. We can help answer these needs for for folks to get jobs. It's a great place where WSU steps in, and all of our regional universities. 259 has been fantastic about that. Has made some really great growth pieces. Another thing we've done is just to market Wichita to outside of Wichita, attracting people. And so, you know, a lot of folks, we did some research, and people don't necessarily have bad connotations about Wichita. They don't necessarily have good connotations. They just kind of have neutral connotations about Wichita when they think about it, which we can work with that, right? That's all right. We can work with that. So we launched a website called ChooseWichita.com, and we found where kids from our area were ending up. Kids from WSU, kids that kind of grew up here. Where did they end up? And so it was places like Oklahoma City, Kansas City, Dallas, Fort Worth, and LA. And so one of the things we're going to be able to do over the next year is, we talked about that geofencing and kind of particular marketing. We will, you know, imagine driving down the 405, being stuck in traffic and seeing a billboard that said, life could be different, you could be home by now, you know, ChooseWichita.com. Those types of things, right?
Well, and the important thing to know is that website, well, there's a lot of great websites in the community. Chamber of Commerce has a great small business website. We tell a story on our website to major businesses. Visit Wichita, talk to the tourists. But there was nobody talking to talent. It was dedicated just for that kind of perspective. So
and we're trying to think about talent not as a commodity, but as a customer, right? Talent, it's so easy to move around the country these days. And so, you know, we need to think about them and show what Wichita has to offer. But this is a place where you can live the life you want to live.
While we're on that subject, why is it so hard to get the data from where we're advertising outside of the city? It seems like I run into the stone wall every time I want to find out what billboard, whatever the case may be, what magazine, whatever. Why can't I get that data?
We have that data through Visit Wichita. We can
They
get
won't
that.
provide it.
Oh, I'll get it for you.
Okay.
That's
Because like I say, I kind of like to see the ads so that, you know, maybe my group might want to advertise in the same thing.
Right, exactly right.
yeah. So we might not be able to get you the currently where they're advertising because they don't want to give their strategy away, but some of the past documents are public. So we'll work on it.
Okay. Bring in the hammer.
Yeah.
And then the other big kind of area is quality of place for us. And that's things, like we said, as little as the flat, things that make us feel unique about our area. And then other big things like kind of the river corridor or our museums or cost of living, those types of things. So downtown Wichita is part of our kind of umbrella entity. So they work within that self-sustaining municipality district, municipality improvement district. Also, we think in terms of quality of place like the airport. How do we think more strategically about the commercial use of the airport? You mentioned something about maintenance, repair, and overhaul. You know, those types of things. Or you know, the Riverfront Legacy Master Plan is an example where our organization, along with a number of others, are saying, let's think about this area in a way that makes economic sense, not just for that area, but for the corridors around it. How do we kind of start nibbling at vision in that area and actually answer some of the big questions that we've been kicking around for the last 10, 15 years? So you'll be hearing much more about that process. In fact, July 31st was just solidifying the final details of the location there. So we can't say that yet, but the late afternoon, kind of early evening, July 31st will be a big first public engagement piece of that. So welcome all of you guys to that as well.
One of you for the Wichita.
Yeah, and in Project Wichita, and I recognize many of you from the district breakfast a couple of months ago, where we talked a little bit about Project Wichita. And so when we talked to Councilmember Clinton, we just thought, you know what, it's great to, sometimes we just get stuck in downtown, and the work we do is so much more than that. And so just want to be able to communicate a little bit of that. And so, and if you guys have questions, reach out to us. If you have hard questions, Andrew's your guy. The easy ones I'll take.
I have a question I was thinking about. How much of a roadblock are you running into at the state level?
I'll tell you, it has been a challenge from a marketing and promotion standpoint. Our, the lead agency for economic development in the state is the Kansas Department of Commerce. And to be blunt, that agency was gutted over the last several years, absolutely gutted. We used to have, as a small state, we used to have one of the leading kind of marketing teams, if you will, kind of agencies. We're building that back, and so it's getting back to where it was. But you know, we need every partner, every advantage we can get. And so when we had, it used to be, going back looking at our historical data, I've probably been here 2.5 years, but looking at our previous records, we used to get about 1/3 of our leads, our prospect inquiries, potential companies from the state. Over the last couple of years, that's dropped to less than 10%. I mean, it's just fallen off. So that's one area where our state is pivoting and changing, and I think it's going to be good.
Well, at the same time, our region is really growing economically. I think people are taking note of that, and we're hopeful that as the kind of local entities like Cindy's group, the nonprofit chamber, and our group are starting to work more regionally, hoping that extends maybe to our legislative and statewide context too. But they see this not just in terms of individual districts, but a mini economy. And so we're hoping to prove that.
You know, real quick, speaking of not being downtown centric, although I just want to encourage people in District 3 to go do things downtown, to do things close to, we're closer to downtown than the East and West districts are. I mean, that really is our backyard, just about. And so anything that positive that's happening downtown or on the river, I mean, that positively impacts us just.
And the traffic there and back's on.
That's really nice.
Well, and I appreciate that, James. That's absolutely true. I would argue, though, too, sometimes the work we do isn't well known. A case in point, so probably our biggest economic development project from a job creation standpoint was last year was in the Southeast District. There's a new firm that moved in from the West Coast, from primarily Seattle, almost entirely because of the new flight we had, the daily direct flight on Frontier and Alaska Airlines from Seattle. A firm called American Directions Research Group, which is actually in the Park Lane Shopping Center in Oliver. We have about 275 employees, now they're call center employees, but they're paying a higher wage than what a lot of our call centers in the community have been paying. But when we talk to them about, hey, that's great, and one of the things you can do to help attract your employees is to kind of do an announcement and tell the Eagle, tell the Business Journal, tell your story. And no, we're not interested in that. The types of contracts that we have, we just prefer to stay below the radar. So we knew about it, and the council member knew about it, and we reached out to them to welcome them, but it wasn't something that made a lot of public fanfare because that was their preference. So there are projects that happen all over the city and all over the regions. Sometimes you know about them, sometimes you don't because the company chooses to.
And those call center jobs that we do attract here, a lot of times they're higher paying because we do have.
You get the right accent.
We keep, well,
That's
we do. We
do.
keep that wage level though.
Midwestern dialect is huge. We have no accent, and we're in the central time zone, so those are two advantages for sure.
And I will
It
tell
sounds
you,
like you can almost tell talent that if they come here and get a job, eventually they can start their own company and be their own boss.
I'm going to use that line, so I'm sorry.
Because I asked them about what's next.
Well, you're busy.
You might.
So I was on the Deadline CT Slack channel today.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they're talking about National Day of Civic Action. Are you familiar with NDOC at all?
Not that, but I do know the Slack. I am familiar with the Slack channel.
So the NDOC, National Day of Civic Action, is sponsored by Code for America. It's a national organization that different cities get involved with. They partner with local groups. I was part of one in Virginia Beach, and we worked with their bus company, Hint, to make that GPS data on the buses available to users to look on their phone and say, oh, I missed my bus, or oh, I better hurry, I gotta pick up my bus. And really, really neat stuff, and really, very interesting. So I bring this up because on that Slack channel, I was reading, some guy was saying, hey, I talked to a guy today, and how did you build your tech company? And the guy said, most important thing that we've done to grow our tech company, he was a guy out in Portland, someplace, was to have events, have people in the community who give speeches, organizations like the ICT and other groups who get up and talk about things. They would go to different places. As a tech person myself, I have to go to Kansas City for SharePoint Saturday. They used to have SQL Saturday up there too. I drive up there just for the day. We used to have a SQL Server user group here, but they could not find anyone to talk, to present. I know we have a lot of tech people in town, and we have people in a wide variety of specialties that I don't know if there is any way to harvest that aspect of it too. Because when you have a tech event, people all over the country are looking at it, will travel for it. And what comes out of that is indicative of the talent pool. So, people, you know, for instance, I'm on a meetup group for a PowerShell group in that triangle group in the Carolinas. Is that triangle?
Research Triangle.
Research Triangle. Yeah. They got a PowerShell group there that does something every month. It's fascinating. I always hate to miss it. I think it actually meets during the day after reading. So I usually miss it, but you can watch the reruns. Great speakers, compelling.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why we're so excited about Flagship. It's just one group that I think will help. It's not going to be a silver bullet for sure. But Startup Grind is not tech specific, but Startup Grind is a national organization for entrepreneurs. We have the second strongest Startup Grind chapter in the country here in Wichita. So there are things that are starting to happen that you're starting to see in other markets.
We also see the entrepreneurial community moving more toward tech, more toward high tech, high growth, high scalability. I think we even see, you know, you can look at some of the code wars, disruptive technologies, and some of the firms they're buying. We're slowly growing this tech sphere here. Even just a number of people that we know that remote in to Silicon Valley, but they live here because it's cheap and they got family here, right? You know, there is a growing swell of tech. Now, I'm not sure how specified you're talking about in terms of tech, but I think there are a number of different factors, even just our engineering. Right? I think the engineering-based level that we have here, the concept of orphan technology, and applying some of these ideas that engineers have come up with and put it in a closet somewhere in Spirit or Textron, and you combine that with a high-tech person or an entrepreneur, what can bloom from that? I think we're starting to see those things start to grow.
So if someone has an idea for tech, how do you get hooked up with a mentor from WSU?
Right.
I think that guy can totally make a challenge.
Yeah, there are mentor groups. Reach out to us. There's a slew of mentor groups out there. WSU has their own small business development center that connects people to growing ideas and all of the lessons that the entrepreneur needs to learn, whether it's funding or really the first one is finding your customer base. So there's a whole slew of groups out there that are doing that. Some are connected to WSU.
An example of maybe not the specific type of tech you're talking about, but there's something called Groover Labs that we'll be launching in the next couple of months. Are you familiar with this customer? So this is one of the guys who grew up in Wichita, graduated from WSU Tech, went in early mid-90s, started getting into LAN, local area network kind of robotics type stuff. Created a company, sold it, and he worked for US Robotics, had a foundation, and had been working with folks individually. And he said, you know what, we're going to do it ourselves. So they bought the old printing heat building downtown and turned that into, hey, you familiar with this? Yeah. Kurt Ridley and Tracy Hoover. They just combined Ridley and Hoover. And there, it's like a high tech. It's going to be more material based, more engineering material based, but it's really to blow into those embers. If somebody has a tech idea or an engineering idea, come there, use their, it's an incubator. Use all of their equipment. They'll mentor, they'll guide, and they'll support. And a lot of those ideas, maybe they work out, maybe they don't. If one works out well, then that supports the entire ecosystem again. So.
You mentioned the airport, that's a special interest. But besides Yingling and Macaulay, what have you got out there in the way of service-related businesses that repair?
Oh, there's a slew of businesses on airport authority ground in terms of, naming them all off. I'll tell you where we're most interested.
I'm talking Eisenhower.
Yeah, no, there's a whole slew of them out there. I guess our most specific interest is around the development land. There's land all around the airport that could be
But it's not
utilized.
on airport.
It's on airport and off airport.
Yeah, okay.
That from our judgment, we haven't fully maximized as a community, so that's our interest. I don't have the list of the companies on airport properties.
Then I have another little interest, but I guess I have to. I'm on site council for automotive at WSU Tech, haven't been for too long, if I can get somebody new. But, you hear from everybody in the automotive industry, Morales, solid recycling, clear up to, new car stores, high-end stuff like Evelyn downtown customizers, whatever. There's a shortage of anything that resembles skilled technicians. And yet WSU Tech shut down their collision repair course. The regular automotive seems to somewhat go wanting for students. And quite frankly, not to bust your bubble, but, if you go look at Micro Works, there ought to be a hell of a lot of opportunity in that area. Is it being focused on at all?
Well, I think that it is. I won't speak to WSU Tech and their strategy. I've heard Dr. Utesh speak to it, and it's very capital intensive to kind of stay up with all of that equipment and that investment.
No doubt.
But what I do know is that you have Cali County Community College moving into that space pretty heavily. Hutchinson Community College has made huge investments in
I know they
the
have
years.
both
So,
had programs in the past, well, that's why IDAR classes went there.
yeah, I think they could certainly do more. And I guess from our standpoint, looking regionally, I think we're trying to see how do we maximize those regional assets to do that maybe well or better, as opposed to asking somebody else to duplicate is my sense. Again, I won't speak for Dr. Utesh and why they moved away from that, but I do know that there's others that maybe we as a regional community need to do a better job of connecting our employers and connecting some of our
I know
assets.
until they
to-
changed the format, I did deputy judge in
Okay,
Pittsburgh State was a powerhouse.
they have been for a long time.
You mentioned McPherson, but that's mostly restoration, classics, and so forth and so on. They're in a niche, but it's an important niche. I mean, there's pretty interesting people. But you've got, seems to me like it's like we've got another automotive manufacturer moving to Tennessee, in addition to VW. And I've had BMW coming to South Carolina, and it's starting
Years
to
ago, yeah. Mazda plant announced in Huntsville, Alabama.
Yeah.
One that we actually chased. We were actually a finalist for that project.
And not to compliment or detract from the current president, it seems like, we've got more focus on American jobs and going somewhere where the taxes and so forth and so on, and wages and benefits are somewhat cheaper. When Ford's doing something, moving production back from Mexico. And then another thing, a side issue, I'm just going off standard here. How come we can't get that 1 million square feet of warehouse that Park City's got? What we failed to do there?
Have cash to give to businesses.
Well, I'm just,
I mean,
Well,
I
Maybe
understand we got Lang and this and that, but you've got South Florida that can't seem to
so
get off the dime. You got Echo Hills that can't seem to get off the dime.
So I want to speak to that real quick. First of all, they have an amazing incentive program
They do.
in Park City, but
Where they get the money?
as we're talking about, well, you know what, I don't know, but,
Okay.
but I would say, as we're talking about jobs and growth, we have to think outside of just the boundaries of Wichita. We have to think regionally. And so if that 1 million square feet is in Park City, more than likely, Park City's only so big.
I don't know, it's 1 million square feet, but it's not a big old building. It's not
It's well north of 1 million.
Then those people are live, working, and playing in Wichita. They're live, working, and playing in the surrounding area. And
Because there ain't nothing to play on
I honestly think we should be celebrating it. I really do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing.
I
So
would
let's
add-
just spend the money, big people in Wichita.
So go ahead and say.
Well,
what
I would add to that, the councilman said it very well. So, a couple dynamics that have happened there. You have a real estate dynamic with Mr. Lou Rebelli, owned a lot of that property.
Okay.
He's also a builder, so he can build those metal buildings at about $35 a square foot, whereas a Wichita developer would be north of that. They have an aggressive incentive policy, but I always like to couch and remind folks, incentives at the end of the day are flows of revenue. They're flows of existing tax revenue. Very rarely are there big, massive buckets of money that any one government just hands to companies. That does happen in Texas, but very few other places. So what you have there in Park City is that city council is very aggressive with their property tax abatement program, and they're willing to give 100% really with very little other criteria. I'm proud of our city council, and our leadership here has understood that real estate dynamics are important. And so year before last, the council member and the council saw fit to update our existing tax abatement policy with a speculative abatement program. And we're seeing that happen and have good effect. The Iron Horse development in South Wichita is one example. There's another one that's going to be before the council next Tuesday in Northeast Wichita. So we're getting spec development. And it's important to know that our class of construction is about $80 or $90 a square foot. So we're getting to be institutional grade investments. It's going to attract more investment versus nothing against Mr. Ravelli's buildings in Park City. They're fine for what they are, but I would say they're B or C investment grade buildings, and they're priced accordingly. So for some companies, that's perfect. It works great. But for other institutional grade companies, that's not going to work.
And that spec building program, so if you've been down and seen Iron Horse, where Hyperpet is now.
Mhm.
Hyperpet didn't take up that whole building when they first moved in, and now they've taken up the whole 100,000 square feet.
Have
They're continuing to build their company here, and they ship all over the world.
Did you?
They ship pet products all over the world.
So when you go to Menards, you can find the section of Hyperpet products. When you buy your dog leashes and your dog toys, look for Hyperpet in bright green. Those are made right here in Wichita, South Wichita.
The last thing I want to mention, that you briefly touched on it, and I have to bring this up, just by location, but the arts and entertainment. As you mentioned, ultimately, employees are going to go, well, what's there to do there? And we've been successful with our, we have to admit that the downtown area has contributed a lot of money to the downtown area. Now that we have additional funding from the federal government and the state, will you guys be working with groups like myself that we can take that a step farther to compete with cities like Lawrence or the Crossroads? It's a big industry. A lot of people take it for granted, and it contributes a lot of money to Wichita. Will you be working with, like I say, groups like it, aside from what we currently have, because it's so mismatched and everything? We need a good strategic plan. Why the money is available now? Would you be willing to work with artists in the community, and organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. We're willing to work with anybody who's helping to grow the community. And the downtown entity is probably the place from a programming standpoint where that traction can kind of get the most leverage.
I know there's a number of marketers that were interviewed during Project Wichita. So, I mean, those voices have been heard, but there needs to be continued to massage that.
In fact, one of our, just the newest addition to our staff is in kind of the director of programming downtown Wichita. This came from City Arts. Emily, yeah, an artist by trade. She's bringing a new thought. You know, he's kind of a dopey guy. He doesn't know about arts or anything.
I'm talking about real estate stuff.
We've got the money.
I don't know, we were just on that function, you and I were talking. So.
We've got the money, we've got the interest, we've got the drive. Before we reach that precipice, we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot. Let's face it, let's get going.
And just culturally, what that adds to the community is, I mean, you're talking about your yield and your cost benefit there, and what that does from a hard data standpoint, but also the soft data.
So what we need to work with organizations like you is not so much to keep driving that forward. We need to stop a lot of the red tape, the issues between, the design district, we got all this stuff. If we can start expediting that and keep our good artists, good talent here, and keep this, break this vortex, basically. We appreciate this. Right now, we're getting really support, other than the Arts Council, but they really can't do anything.
Yeah, that's great. Good feedback. We're mindful of the time.
Yeah.
And
So anybody?
read anything about the James Chong's report?
Yeah.
Sounds, from what I've read, he's extremely frustrated. He went through all this effort and nobody's listening.
Yeah. Well, I think a couple observations and maybe a positive and negative. his reaction to the Chung report. Number one, a lot of his data was, and he says it as much, a lot of his data is historical. So he's basing a lot of his takeaways on historical data, which is good. That was all the data that was available. But at the same time, the positive thing I did is it got all of us talking. I mean, it was a call to action, and it still continues to be a call to action. And from our vantage point, what we do for a living as a partnership, we cannot do it. I mean, there's no point in stopping or slowing down. We're very much in the mode of let's do more and see how we can keep driving forward. So,
Yeah, and I think we've seen from the nonprofit sector, from the community organization sector, the private sector, the public sector, the last 4 or 5 years have been years where I think people have seen things a little bit differently and have understood that working together is much more efficient. I think he helped contribute to that. But I think, he's also not the superhero that's going to save the day, right? To the extent what he was saying is true, and different folks have different opinions on it. It's up to the community to hear it, to be sober about it, and to respond. I think that's what we get excited seeing, is that community saying, yeah, the diagnosis may be this, but what we're going to do in response? This. And that produces something that's much more tangible than we're good.
So, and then the turnpike ward in Wichita, Topeka.
Well, you've got a ceasefire between Kansas City, Missouri now.
So I think what I'd like to do is maybe in a couple months, we can go down to the partnership offices and maybe have our district advisory board there. And then Jeff Fleur has often invited us down there, and we've done that a couple times. That way this group can see, where you guys work out of, and consider what you're talking about today, and maybe talk a little bit more. So
a lot of what we shared tonight will be repeated, and Jeff will say it better. So absolutely happy to have
Well, he'll say it with more of a southern drawl.
You don't necessarily have to do the same presentation, but I would love everybody to be able to see, just at least feel and see what's
And
going
we're
on.
thankful to be partnering. Like Andrew said, probably is it 80-20, 75-25 private to public. But we're thankful to have a partnership with the city and the county and the regional entities as well, because we've all got to be pulling this road together. So.
And the wonderful thing is that it really is driven by the private sector. And it is one of those things that if you get the private sector involved in making this happen, it's really more successful, more sustainable, honestly. And so it requires a lot less money from taxpayers to be more effective. So thank you guys.
you. Thank you very much.
As I was telling the councilman, this may be a worse right now when I hear it, but that's to tend to illustrate some of your comments through a personal thing. Our son went to WSU, got a degree in engineering, said he didn't want to work in engineering. So through a circuit of things, he ended up as a design engineer, big on motorcycles. Well, we know that doesn't exist anymore. So a company in basically LA area hired him, paid to move him, his stuff is now wife and everything out there. He'd been there 3 days, and of course he sold his house, which was the house he grew up in. We sold it to him for cheap. But anyhow, he gets out there, it's like 3 days in, and he calls him, his mom will never be able to buy a house here.
Yeah.
Even a mobile home can't afford a lot to put one on. So we're in a crappy little apartment across the street from work. So he's there like 2 years or so. They come back here on Thanksgiving, call up some friends, go out to eat at a local restaurant. Gets back to the house about 10, flops down on the couch and goes, we could never do that in California. They said it'd take 2 months of planning. There'd be 2.5 hours on the front end, 2.5 hours on the back end, just getting there and back with reservations if they honored them when we got there. He says, here, we just call up our friends, we go eat, when we're home.
Yeah, we want to hear about 100,000 more of those stories.
And so this is Thanksgiving. The week before Christmas, he gave his notice there, came back here without a job on his own dime. And of course, now he's a design engineer assistant.
So thank you guys.
Yeah.
We appreciate you being here. These guys are helping us tackle a lot of Wichita issues. Honestly, we have the same issues that most cities have. Our issues that we have here are not unique to us. And the best way, the reason why I think it's important for these guys to be here, the best way to fight all the ills in our city, like crime, those sorts of things, tax revenue for streets and fire and police, are to employ people. Jobs are a cure-all. And so, anyway, so that's why we're so involved in making sure that these guys are successful. So, thank you guys, appreciate it. Okay, so real quick, we're gonna talk about the budget simulator. You guys have seen the budget simulator results. We don't have anybody from the city of Wichita here to do a presentation, but wanted you guys to have, you guys have the budget simulator?
They have the infographic.
Yeah, great. So, oh, you have a pretty one.
You have the condensed one.
Yeah, I've got that one too.
They got the long report.
So guys, this was very telling. Yeah, I think we were not surprised in the city of Wichita that the priorities were on public safety and streets. Because that's what we hear from you guys all the time, public safety and streets. And it was also interesting though, that the majority of people were willing, and I'm quoting from what I remember, to pay 3 to 4% more on their own personal tax bill. And that's really not much on your tax bill. But 3 to 4% more to get the things that we want and we need, right? And a lot of times it's what we want, but that's what we need. And it was interesting that knowing that we haven't raised taxes, and as far as the mill levy, we haven't raised the mill levy, I should say, in 25 years or so.
Somebody needs to tell Jennifer about this.
Jennifer.
Phasing.
Oh,
What
well,
about it?
yeah,
Phasing no taxes.
yeah. Well, so
She's too busy keeping track of that kid of hers.
So
He's a character, isn't he?
this is
Anyway, sorry.
okay, guys. Okay.
And the husband, that's right.
So I'm not going there right now.
No idea.
So this is just one tool that the city council will use. It's just one data point the city council will use as we start to make decisions for the next year's budget, the next year's budget. Just because people say they want to pay more does not mean that there's a political will to do that.
Right.
But it means, you know what, if we did put it on the ballot,
If you promise what it would be used for, I think this is the key thing right there. Not just the
Yes.
global.
Yeah.
Just saying, man, we're gonna end up with the nation's best police force.
But it needs to be kept in check,
Absolutely.
and there has to be follow through. The problem with you guys even saying that there's gonna be increased police or increased fire or, improved streets is the ability to get that done.
Yeah.
Like, to get increased police, there has to be more bodies that get trained, get on the road, stay on the road.
There's the key.
You
Staying on the
know,
road.
once again, the jobs.
Yeah. So attrition is really hard in the police department. So
Right.
Yeah.
the good thing is,
Those guys want to party too,
yeah. In our last year's budget, we increased the number of officers we've put on the streets, our phase one, right, of the increase based on the study WC did. Well, in the last year, we did a great job at filling we're up 60 positions, I guess, from where we were last year. But we were still negative from the original deficit, right, because of all the retirements. So now we're a little bit ahead, but we still have not filled all the
Correct.
extra positions we authorized last year. Just because of retirement, attrition, it's hard. And honestly, not all the cadets make it through
Right.
the academy. I think we have a class of 35 just getting ready to start. The wonderful thing that we have that really started last year is that we have a new training facility. We have a more efficient way to train officers. We have a more efficient way to make sure there's ongoing education for officers and that they have that support. But that's only been in place a year. And so hopefully, our fingers are crossed.
And part of the problem is also Chief Ramsey is reorganizing and
Yes.
redoing the way he runs his police department. So there's a lot of police officers
that are on the force, but they are being trained for new,
Cross training.
Great example, I know what you're talking about. Great
Yes.
example is CIT training,
yes,
crisis intervention training.
and,
So officers know how to deal with somebody has a mental illness.
yes. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but that takes bodies
It does, takes them off the
on
street.
the roads.
But
Yeah.
it also can reduce the number of criminal incidents that happen if we're dealing with there.
Yeah, yeah.
But the other thing too, I toured that facility, training, part of that CEA. class that I went through.
Which one, the new training center?
Yeah, the new training center.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things that the officer said was that people will go through there, they'll get trained up, and then the Correctional Institute snatches them away and offers
Right.
a higher rate.
Sometimes.
It doesn't happen all the time, but there's a lot of ways that.
We do the same thing though with other departments. I mean, it just happens, especially from the sheriff's department to police department or small town departments too, which probably a lot of that kind of, oh gosh, help me out, Carol, what do they call that? Lateral moves.
That's the word I was looking for.
It's the lateral move.
Yeah.
And,
Same stuff, different day.
but the great thing is the county, they raise their wages. The city is also, that they're comparable, and so it stopped a lot of that between county and city. But, you know, the wonderful thing about that training center is county and city are trained together now.
Well, and that's the way it should be.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
they back each other on so many times.
Now, they were before at the old training center,
Right.
but it just was so hard that
We heard about that.
we do it together.
Oh.
So response is even and equal, and you get the same type of service and response. So if you guys ever want a chance, you want to go on a tour, I see you, Michael, I promise. If you want a tour of that facility, so you're right though. This only reflects our ability to be able to do it, and so
So just remember, when you go down here and say, well, in my advisory, they were all for and backing me on, they'll raise the rates and they'll pay more.
Well, but again, you do have to have a ballot initiative that's clear cut, and that people know exactly where that money's gonna go.
Right.
And what it's
that's
gonna
the
go
big
to.
thing.
So, I think we learned that lesson about 4.5 or 5 years ago.
Rational people will pay. I mean, there will be some, there will be that entity that will always protest no higher taxes. you
That's
know.
fine, and if they get out and they vote and vote something down, then that's just the will of the people, and we have to decide that.
This is one of the reasons why I asked in our neighborhood association, I asked our community.
It's okay, Michael, you're next. Okay, you're next.
Our community police officer to give us these historical data on the crime trends. When we invest more in our police and they come to the neighborhood association and they say, this is down from last year, this is down from last year, this has stayed the same. It lets people in our neighborhoods know that their money is being invested. So that's a way of marketing.
Response times have gotten better too, but they still need a lot of work. Michael?
The thing that worries me, I have 2 points, is get enough correct people
Right.
able to be able to take.
Is that true? Is that
And
really
the reason
reflected?
I'm asking is I'm computer literate. I didn't do it because I have a hard time getting on and doing it. And how many people did it out of 450,000? And how many?
Yeah, it was a little over 1,000.
That's the 1%
Could they make the raw data available on OpenData.wichita.gov?
We can ask.
Could we ask?
We can ask, I
Can I
don't know.
finish?
Yeah.
And I heard at a meeting last night, and Mr. Rachel was talking about it. Every time you put an officer on the streets, it costs the budget about $100,000. Salary, benefits, medical, stuff like that.
It's a lot.
Okay, so with the article that was in the Wichita papers several weeks ago about the fact that we have about 670 officers, and a town our size needs 980, that's 300 times 100,000. What?
Okay, so.
Okay, I know, this sounds outrageous. Are we looking at the budget if we get personnel, if you get enough people, can we afford it?
Okay, so the study that was done by WSU said at the minimum, we needed, I think it was between 74 and 78 positions in the police department to be kind of at the bottom level of where we need to be national. 300 and some more officers is at the top level of where cities are, okay? We do not need that many more police officers in the city of Wichita, nor could we ever afford that. So I think with the chiefs and what's starting to finally happen is that technology is being deployed in the police department to allow them to do their jobs more efficiently, especially with the analytics, the crime analytics programs that they're starting to use to be more efficient about how they're using their resources. So just throwing money at the problem isn't the only solution. We need to make sure that when we do start putting more money into it, that it's being used efficiently and that our officers have the tools they need to fight crime. The other issue is not just our officers needing more officers, but the court systems are overloaded, and personal property crimes and those sorts of things, those people aren't normally staying in jail. They bond out, they get out, wait for trial. A lot of times we won't do jail time because there are a lot worse criminals, right, that are flooding the system. And so it's frustrating for officers as well that when they apprehend someone, they find them right back on the street. There's kind of a vicious cycle. And so that's going to take county, city, and state working together to fix that particular problem.
But a huge part of that is that we're using our jails and our police officers to handle mental health issues.
Yeah.
And what we really have to address is the mental health system.
what stun guns were for.
No, what we really have to address is the mental health system, providing affordable, accessible mental health services. Otherwise, we're never gonna dig ourselves out.
Understand stun guns, man.
So
Yeah, I bet you hear something about it.
So the last two police shootings were in South Wichita. But they were, they did kill the guys with guns because the guys were actually shooting. And they were both mental health related. And access to mental health care doesn't necessarily mean access to drugs for mental health care. It's just access for counseling for people. Access.
Doesn't necessarily mean that will fix them.
Not necessarily, but we're not even able to try to
Just
help.
put them in jail, and 95% of our people in jail.
That's really
are
a
very
state
heavy
issue,
mental
though.
health issues.
It's a state issue. When they started closing places down.
Well,
they
sure
used
it
to go on that.
is, sure it is, but it's
Yeah, it goes
also,
back to that.
it's also an issue related to meth and opioids, because that's growing so much.
Self-induced to me is very different than actual.
Well, but the thing is that some people self-induce because they have untreated mental health
If they're self-medicated.
illnesses, and they're self-medicating, and they need to get off that.
That's why we start medicating them.
Get off because there's no services.
Well, let's come back to the budget. It does all relate to the budget. But
On the subject.
when it comes to the budget simulator, on the things that we can control, and by the way, mental health, absolutely, we gotta figure that out, but honestly, it's the county, right now, that's a county purview. And, the county is, somebody who's tackling that. Hopefully, we can partner with the county and state to make some of that happen. But I will tell you this, when you look at this budget simulator, one of the things that, and I don't know if it's on here. Well, some of the things that people did not want. And I don't know if that is in here. I'm looking.
Here, lower percentages.
You want me to pull that up on Facebook?
There you go. So if you look at number 40, I was shocked.
I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get there.
I was shocked. But the arts, one of the things.
They've got big.
Well, you gotta take a
packets.
Yeah, we got different.
And we got the.
So the bottom four,
You got that pretty one.
the bottom four were library branches, arts and culture, city art, and golf. So are we gonna get rid of all those? No. Again, this is just one data point for us to know,
It
okay,
was less than 2,000 people. took this.
it was.
So here's,
Less
So,
than 1,500.
and this was the first year. And we promoted it on TV, we promoted it on social media, we sent out emails on the website. We did what we could, as cheaply as we could, to promote this. But next year, and the year after, once we have these results, and if we start comparing them year after year to what people are caring about, we're gonna get a good baseline of what people, 1 year is not gonna tell you, okay? But it was really interesting to see where most people that took the survey feel, they would like their tax dollars spent. It didn't happen.
But
One
one of
through
the,
eight.
one of the interesting things I found, James, was that 33%, so in the highest category, were people that were in income ranges from 50,000 to 99,999.
Mhm.
And I know that from some of the surveys I looked at in the past, for instance, when we were developing the comprehensive plan for the city and the county, when we looked at survey results regarding what people wanted in this community, a lot more of that fell with higher income.
Sure.
And so I was impressed that we did get more feedback from people that are in that $50,000
Right.
to $99,000
I agree. So guys,
household.
yeah, go ahead.
so I would say, that's, I guess being retired, I'm in one of the, that really sucks to be in the income category, but, this is the only place I ever heard of it. I don't remember seeing anything in the, I take the daily newsletter, or what you call it, pamphlet. And I didn't see it there, didn't see it on TV.
It was a disagreeing newsletter.
It was,
Well, that's still here.
It was on my Facebook page.
No, the district three
What makes
newsletter.
it fit your Facebook page?
The district three newsletter.
No, but I mean, it's still District 3.
I
It's here for the meeting. Okay, so, and yeah, we talked about how few people. The terrible thing about it to me is the weight that this is given when in reality, this is a pretty microscopic snapshot of people engaged and interested enough to find the time and place to do this and not dismiss it as another BS survey that is going to come to the conclusion it wants no matter what you say. And then,
We could market it without using the word budget. The word budget scares people away.
okay, then
Their opinion, something.
the top 8, nearly all of them are basically public safety related things. And then we get down to number 40, which you pointed out, the most hated item there is golf courses that supposedly aren't getting any money from the budget.
We're giving them money from the budget, last couple of years we have,
What, for Auburn Hills?
just to subsidize the system.
Well, you've killed the one you're subsidizing, so that's a fair enough. But anyway,
Oh.
but now, but,
Thank you so much.
but, I did not you personally.
Hey, wait a minute, haven't you heard him talk the last 4 or 5 meetings?
Yeah.
He's been over backwards to help golf.
I didn't mean you personally, you
Listen
said
to
it,
yourself.
okay?
Shame on you, Paul.
Huh?
Shame on you.
Okay,
Well,
come on.
shame on me, it's fine. But,
I make a motion that we just continue the discussion of the budget and get on with the rest.
Let Paul finish, let Paul finish.
but the thing that I had pointed out to me by a person who is no longer a golf course owner operator, when I pointed out that it's an enterprise zone, now the city budget went to operate it, he goes, okay, well, all the people that work at the city golf courses are city employees and they're all on their retirement program, yada, yada, yada. So, you know, is that real or is it not?
So they are city employees, and I guess you can split hairs there if you'd like.
Well, it's money.
But they're still paid though out of this golf system. The labor that is involved and everything is,
But healthcare and retirement and all that stuff is or isn't out of the golf fund.
well, they're paid, they're paid out of the city budget.
There you go. Okay.
So what? As an employee, they're part of parks, the
Yeah.
Parks Department, and so they're parks employees.
Yes, right.
So So when it comes to their pension and everything else, they would be paid just like any other employee would be paid. So,
I just still thought it was interesting that the one thing that supposedly isn't a budget item is the thing that you must pay.
so, well, some people really do believe that the city should be subsidizing the golf system. There are people that believe that it should be something that should be paid for out of the general fund, and that closing a course because the system is holding its own was probably the worst thing they've ever done, and I understand that. I did work very hard over the past 8 years I know, I'm good, we're good, Paul. To save Platt, and it finally came down to the Golf Advisory Committee, the Park Board, and the majority of the council wanted to close it. And if anybody saw, there was a interview done with me in the Business Journal about it.
Yes.
I'll just say the same thing. I could have dug my heels in and allowed the Park Board and the other entities take that green space and sell it off and turn it into something out and develop it into a concrete jungle. Or I could start working on making sure that we preserve the green space into something that is still going to be an asset for the community.
And you could have had 6 enemies on every book from the on.
True, absolutely. And so we've made sure that we're preserving the green space. We've made sure that we're going to turn that park into something that is going to be amazing in District 3. So we took away a golf course, but honestly, if you think about it, and as I talked to the community, people were excited that we were actually adding an amenity to the public. So there are a lot of golfers that are upset. It was probably making that motion. I wish that I was not the one that the mayor asked, but making that motion to close Platt was probably the hardest thing I've done since I've been on council. But again, knowing that working with the other council members, we're going to be able to put something that's an asset for the community. It's something that I'm looking forward to. So, all right, guys, there is not much more unless you guys have something you want to talk about.
I do, a few comments and then a question. Number one, and probably most importantly, I really appreciate the patience and respect our police are showing in standoffs.
Yeah.
Even letting them go for hours and hours and hours, but not shooting anybody.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Unless those people start shooting first.
They need to hear that, and I appreciate it. Number two, a little thing. Every time I get behind the city bus, I thank God I don't have that exhaust in my face anymore.
Oh, because they have the
That's
cost.
right.
Yeah.
I think somebody needs to know, somebody made a good decision there, and I appreciate it.
I think that might be the only option. I don't know. It might be
But anyway, number three, and this might be easy, when they're gonna start fixing our sinkhole on 55th
Oh my
and
gosh, that's
Hydraulic?
been there for a
And if
month
they
now.
don't start working that still on the name and Glendon
Yeah, no, we've
and I have a little more after that, but go.
they want to make sure. But they're
Is
there. They want
that the first sinkhole in our district that you know about?
what I know about. They're wanting to make sure that they're fixing underneath and making sure that everything underneath is done. There's
It's
already-
sewer, right?
Yeah, there's already been some work.
So how about that in the aquifer? Is that sewer been bleeding into the aquifer
Yeah,
all this
no.
time?
I think they pretty much.
So that's what all the stuff up the street and the manholes has been. I mean, there's been a lot.
Yeah, there's been a bunch up the street.
Well, yeah, that's part of.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so they're just making sure that all the underneath stuff is done right now. The sinkhole's gonna get taken care of. I was shocked. I was shocked.
You know, that has been going down for over 10 years. They have to repave it and repave it. There, it's not a new issue.
Really? Well, it's
Yeah.
really close to
It's
my
my
house.
fault for not telling you.
Mine too.
It's really close to my house, and so.
Yeah, I'm thinking your property may be dropping in value right now. So,
Oh, no, our.
so they're in the
property,
process.
That's done, we don't see it.
Exactly.
They're working, they are
Sewer
working.
is gonna pay for that, not the city.
Yeah, so that's a sewer, that's a storm sewer issue, so that would be paid out of that.
Ooh, really?
Okay.
But
Right, very good.
$250,000 on the base for that.
It is? How'd you know that?
Whenever we have to dig up a street to do a storm sewer project, it's always paid for out of the stormwater utility, which is also an enterprise fund.
How'd you know how much that was gonna be?
Because I saw it on the news, that the city council was gonna have to approve the $250,000 expenditure to pay for that to be fixed.
Because it's an emergency. It's not in the
Okay, but
regular
it's still
budget.
out of the same place.
And
Yeah.
everything I see on the media is the truth.
Absolutely. I sure hope.
Lastly, but absolutely critical to our safety.
Yes.
Who was the drunken fool that put the lines on I-135?
You can talk to KDOT about that.
I want you to squeeze those people. Somebody needs to be shot.
Those are just temporary.
They are temporary.
Oh, yeah.
Those are just
Yeah,
temporary.
well,
That's a good thing, because you take an old guy going down the road, this could be dangerous.
Now, let's somebody do it right.
Have a couple drinks in those streets.
Thanks.
Carol.
would like,
Holy
I would like
What language
to
did you speak?
thank-
Can't do it.
Okay, hold on, Carol, I gave Carol.
I would like to publicly thank Maddie Campbell, because every time I send her an email with an issue, she responds to me. And we have worked out where if that issue has been worked and cleaned up in my area, I will let her know, that way she can
Yeah,
keep this,
Yeah, good.
you know, these people. But she
Absolutely.
did this wonderful.
Well, I remember when I was in between, neighborhood assistance. I promise you, there were a lot of emails that slipped through the cracks, and there was a lot of, so when Janet Johnson left, and then we had a couple other people that, and there was a lot of shuffling going on, I was left very high and dry.
She's wonderful.
So I know the amazing value that she has.
So why don't you double her salary and make her full-time, whatever she wants?
If it was my call, I would.
On a lighter note, and I hope the last note, I think it's very appropriate that the CBD, Central Business District, is the same initials as the CBD oil.
Oh,
We ought to capitalize on that.
You know, guys, I want to tell you, when I first got on council,
Which is how long ago?
8 years ago. 8 years ago. There were a lot of things that were being neglected, and there were a lot of people that were against things that were going on downtown and the investment being made. But truly, I believe that those things are going to really add to the quality of life for everybody in South and Southeast Wichita, speaking of the Central Business District. You can walk right over to downtown from here. It's not that bad of a walk. I actually do it a lot now.
It is pleasant to walk
And,
downtown Wichita now.
and we're going to continue to do those improvements. Many of you may have seen there's a whole river corridor kind of master plan being put together. Again, these are places really close to us that we can go play and have fun and enjoy the investment the city is making. But also, the other thing I need to mention is we are, believe it or not, our roads in South and Southeast Wichita are starting to look better than roads
Since all the water.
in East and West Wichita, believe it or not.
Brick crosswalk.
If you've ever been up on Woodlawn out east, Woodlawn's in horrible shape. But we're getting ready to have Harry Street this year.
They're working on it right now.
Are they really? Well, Harry Street, it's really bad in front of St. Joe Hospital, and that's going to be redone. Lincoln Street is being done. Broadway is going to be resurfaced. I mean, we have a lot of our major thoroughfares here in South and Southeast Wichita are going to continue to be done this year. Oliver, where it's real bad, is another area that's going to be done. The intersection at Hillside and Mount Vernon, although it looks horrible right now, the utility work's finally done. It's going to be a new intersection with turns to make it safer. There's just a ton of projects that I'm thinking of and investments that have been made. And so that wasn't all me. That was the community saying, we demand that this stuff get done. And Jim Skelton before me started the ball rolling. And as I came in, we were able to really work with the public to make some of those projects happen. So I just want to encourage you guys, as you see those things, as you see things that need to be done. Oh, Mount Vernon, right over here, too. We're buying up right of way. It's gonna finally be nice. You guys continue to tell me what needs to be done, and we'll continue to move it along. And over the next 2 years, before I end my term, I really want to have so much momentum going.
Yes.
That really do, that it continues for a long time.
One last question, something, you said something about east, or south of 47. There's a lot of dirt work going on there right now. Do you have any idea what's?
Where at?
South of 47th there, that development.
I-135 and Turnpike.
Oh, yeah.
There's dirt trucks
South
there.
Florida.
So, the state, so, it's so disappointing, but it's kind of the reality of the market. So, the front portion is still gonna be all retail, and it's gonna be all everything that we talked about. But there's gonna be, it's gonna be warehouses and stuff down on the back portion of it. I'm pretty disappointed.
Dollar General on the
I can't do anything about warehouses being there.
I just knew they were working.
Yeah. The city did our part to make sure that the TIF district was in place and that everything was done to allow that thing to succeed. We did our part as a city. Unfortunately, getting a big box store, getting an anchor in there, there are several that were courted, from Menards to Lowe's to Walmart, Sam's, Costco. There's a huge list of people that we tried to get down there, and a lot of them wanted to go to Derby because of the demographics. One of the Sam's were way northeast. So it is what it is. But the great thing is, though, that what comes with those warehouses will be jobs, will be at least some semblance of activity. The other good thing is we brought that whole neighborhood to the south out of the floodplain. Those people are so grateful. There are actually houses selling in there now when they couldn't before. And so, but that's what's going on.
Thank you.
And then we have to quickly.
Very, very quickly, maybe on a closing note, if you want to decrease crime, decrease mental health issues, both the suffering of the individual as well as the societal impact, there's one easy solution.
Yeah.
Get to know your neighbor.
Yeah.
Go out and make an effort to know your neighbor, listen to their wants, listen to their interests, help them create the vision, share their vision of a Wichita, of a neighborhood. Because if we don't develop a vision for ourselves, we'll continue to be plagued by problems, and we'll continue to be led by the nose by developers and other people who may not always be acting in our self-interest. Get to know your neighbors.
Last one. Okay.
I'm just wanting to say I'm really disappointed to see the two words economic development in the newspaper today in connection with Black Park.
Yeah.
And regarding the potholes, I get checked all over Europe for 76 days, 1960. I do not remember one single pothole. What are we doing wrong?
Taxes are much, much higher in Europe.
Yeah.
40-some% of your paycheck goes to taxes in Europe. So that's the first thing. And secondly, what article was talking about CLAP and economic
Well, there was
development?
something in the paper today. I just
So-
glanced at it and mentioned something about the value of the economic development.
Okay, so when we talk about economic development in relation to CLAP, we're not talking about developing CLAP into commercial real estate space. What we're talking about is when you put amenities that we don't have anywhere else really in the region that we've talked about in CLAP. We draw more people down to that area of town. The hope is then they want to start shopping in the area. The hope is some of the empty restaurants and empty buildings start being filled with businesses because now there are more people around in the area to shop. and patronize those businesses. So when we talk about economic development in relation to Clap, it's how do we use that piece of property as an amenity to drive more people down to the area so we can lift it up economically.
There was also a comment that they're not going to sell property, but the city might build buildings and lease them to commercial ventures.
Yeah, so Cindy, I don't know where that's coming from. You were on that same committee as I was on. But there has not been any talk about the city building buildings and leasing it to people. What we have talked about though is that if inside the park, again, we'll talk about gathering space down in Tulsa. You guys have never been to gathering space. It's a huge park with tons of amenities for kids and families and water fountains. Maybe there's a coffee shop or something in there to serve people that are in the park. Or maybe there's a bike or boat rental facility. You know, that sort of thing. Any park-related development will be just that.
Talking about like a building, like
Park-related.
at that Derby.
We're talking about an event center.
An event center.
An event
Yes.
center.
Maybe that's what they were talking
Yeah.
about, possibly.
Possibly, but there has not been, so the citizen steering committee, what they did is they went out to the public and they listened to what the public wanted. 10, 11, 12
Yeah,
meetings,
quite a few.
all over, neighborhood associations to senior living facilities to here to everywhere. And then they put together 3 scenarios that they felt would fit within what they got from public feedback. None of them included commercial activity. And then what's going to happen now is the city is going to take that and we will move forward with the master plan process to do a master plan for that piece of property. And then that will also include even more public feedback. So as we go through the master planning process, when that's done, we will have a master plan that will set forth what the community wants to see and give us a document that allows the city to invest in those things in the future. So please don't think when we talk about economic development, we're talking about selling the property and leasing commercial space. That's not what we're doing. That really isn't. So I'm glad you mentioned something because that's a misconception.
Another misunderstanding.
Well, again, the paper hasn't been kind about getting some things correct recently. So I hate to say that, but it just happened.
Well, I think the guy that presented at city council didn't help that, so.
No.
So on that happy note,
Yeah, go ahead, last thing.
You're making a motion for.
no, I want to get one sentence out without interrupting myself.
Censor, remember? Speak, take a vote, censor.
Yeah, I can do that. The mayor said the process was the problem. Being on the airport advisory board, and being there for presentations and so forth and so on, at whose desk did the process go so far off that the Eagle knows more about what's going on at the airport than the airport does when it comes to a hotel?
So there was a last minute, there was some last minute changes that were done to the contract for the hotel. The city council, as the Eagle was investigating it, even before they called any of us, we were saying, okay, hold on. We just got a contract. We don't have time to read through it. We're gonna hold off on that contract until we have time to digest it and make sure everybody else is okay. So the Eagle reported it, made it sound like there was some shenanigans going on. It wasn't. There wasn't. And where the process being broken is, and we're putting some processes in place to make sure that if we get anything after agenda review on Fridays, if there are any changes that are made in contracts or anything, that they cannot come to the city council for this council meeting on Tuesday. We at least have to wait a week so we can be updated and briefed to make
I
sure.
understand that being a pretty big item for consent agenda, but being on the airport, a month ago, the previous Monday, that was presented to us all wrapped up, nice and pretty with the big bow. The legal department had reviewed, the staff at the airport had reviewed, the airport director had reviewed. Everybody there was, good deal, done deal, just have to have the council approve it.
I think the
And all of a
council
sudden it
went
went,
out of purpose, everything that you do, like, after the fiasco 10 years ago with the Riverwalk, we are taking our time to review.
Okay, wait a second.
That
So,
has nothing to do with you guys, you weren't involved in it, but still.
but here's the thing.
Bad taste.
People tell the city, you're not moving fast enough. And then they tell the city, slow down.
Yeah,
You're not moving fast enough.
When these
Slow
things
down.
happen.
Let's just make sure we get it right, regardless of the speed.
The rewards of public service.
I'll
I just can't imagine how many people were involved in that contract with Patel, with the hotels already there, not exercising their right to refusal or whatever.
So,
And everything was all nice and pretty and reviewed and approved, and then bang, it all
but
blows up.
regardless of what people think, the city council does not rubber stamp.
I understand that.
And so when we get a contract on Monday, we are not gonna vote on it Tuesday. I mean, we gotta make sure that we're
Yeah.
reviewing.
We're not Congress.
And you guys have
Oh,
had,
no, that takes a year.
you guys had a
Oh,
chance
no.
to review it, but we didn't. And so we have to make sure, and you know what? The other thing I'd like to say is, the thousands of things that we pass in the city council level every year.
Yeah.
One or two mistakes, that's a pretty good track, right? So, you know,
So
Some-
let's
some
just
of the
say you're not
mistakes-
gonna tear down Century Two, is that what you're saying?
no. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I
Ladies and gentlemen, so I am late.
To me,
Oh,
what?